Welcome to our book club. I'm David Butler and this is Emily Freeman.
This month we are going to be talking about the Peter potential. We're really excited about that.
It is our first book club for Multiply Goodness, so this is extra exciting.
And where to begin, because we love so much about this book, but at the very root, this book is about change. And that's what we thought we would talk about today for the book club is just the process we go through of changing and deciding to change and recognizing how the Lord plays a part in that process.
And you might love how the whole thing begins because let me just read this. Has anyone ever told you you're extraordinary, that you're destined for remarkable things, that there's a spark of greatness in you? They should have. And then where we go next is to talk about that you might feel you're really ordinary, that great things, great changes like happened to Peter could never happen in you.
And what we want you to remember is those things can happen. That the Lord has amazing things in store for you, that you are remarkable. And for many of us, it's just figuring out how do we discover what those amazing things are.
And as we studied the New Testament and had talks over lots of years about Peter, we noticed a pattern in his life and thought that might be a pattern that could be applicable to everybody's life. And that is what the book is about.
Yeah, we noticed that the Lord had extended Peter a whole bunch of invitations, one after the other, and that is how Peter began to experience the changes he was experiencing, is because he accepted those invitations. And we thought, what if we accepted those same invitations from the Lord? What would happen in our life? What would we have the potential to become?
So let's, maybe we should share our favorite invitations or something from the book.
And it's maybe good to start out and talk about who was Peter, and that he wasn't always the remarkable person that he is. At the very beginning, he was a fisherman.
Yeah, and even at the very end, that's what he is still too. He's discovered some great things about himself. He's experienced lots of miracles, but one of my favorite pages, a picture of on one of my favorite pages is page
88.
88
is where we're going to go.
It's right at the end, and if you open up and see, it is a picture of Peter just back on the Sea of Galilee, right where the whole story began, throwing a big messy net back into the sea, doing a mundane, normal hard work, and right at the very end, even after he's walked on water and seen all these miracles, Peter still pictures himself as a normal person who can do great things with the Lord.
And I love about this picture, one of the things that stands out the most is this net. And Peter just in the midst of that ordinary task, but we remember one of the greatest miracles was this net. And that within the net we don't just see the ordinary part of Peter, but we see the miracles of the Lord, because this is where it all began, is with that net and with all of those fishes, and till the nets were breaking with goodness. And the same is true for us. The Lord will take us in our most ordinary moments, in those places where we are, and He will send blessings and goodness and miracles in those moments.
And just like Peter, when you feel like you don't have enough to offer, one of the invitations that you'll find in the story, in the book, refers to the story of Peter and the other disciples out in a desert place. And they're there with the multitude of people. You remember the big crowds. And the Savior wants to feed them. It's too late, and He wants to feed them before they go. And so He asks the disciples, what do you have to offer? What do you have? And you'll remember that Peter and the other disciples just have a couple loaves of fishes and a couple bread, and that's all that they have.
And I love
to give.
In that moment, that how many of us have been in that moment? How many of us have been in that wilderness place, in that place where no matter how hard we look, we're not going to find anything more than what we already have. There were no stores, there were no places they could go to find something better than what they had to offer. And we have those wilderness places. We have those moments when we're like, this is it. This is all I have to offer in this moment.
Yeah, and especially because Peter was a compassionate soul, and he would have seen that whole multitude of people there, and he knew what the Savior's intentions were, and and he thought, I don't have enough. Like, I don't have enough to give all of these people. And that must have been heavy on his heart, even a heartbreaking moment to think, like, what I have will not be enough to feed these people. Like, if it were up, they would have to go away hungry.
Yeah, and I love the Lord's invitation in that moment is so simple. What do you have to offer? Go and see. And it's like doing this personal inventory. Each of us can do that, where we have to stop for a minute and think, okay, in this situation that I'm in, whatever it is, in a situation with a child or within your family, within the walls of your home, or with a friend who's struggling, or someone within your circle of influence, what do I have to offer? And we take that personal inventory of what is it that I can bring in this moment, and then give it to the Lord and hope that he will bless it and make it more. Right.
And remember, that's not the first time Peter's seen the Lord do something miraculous. And so I love how the New Testament shows how often Peter went back to thinking, wait, I'm so ordinary. You know, I don't have enough. And remember, the Lord asked this question. I love this page where he says, do you not remember? How is it that you do not understand? He knows everything about you. He knows what keeps you up at night. He knows what weighs on your heart. He knows you're longing to become something more. And in this line that we love, if the Lord can do great things with a single loaf, imagine what he can do with a single life.
Yeah, I love, that's one of my favorite quotes of the whole book. And just remembering that no matter where we are in the process, because we're going to have moments like Peter did where the nets are bursting, or moments where you have that opportunity to come unto the Lord and experience a walking on water moment, where you do something that is beyond anything that you're capable of doing on your own, or watching the loaves and the fishes be multiplied. And it's so interesting that every time before the next invitation is given, Peter goes back to that ordinary place again. And it's almost like the Lord has to be constantly reminding him, okay, Peter, this is what we are going to do with your life next. And the same is true for us. Sometimes we get back to that ordinary place where we think, who am I in the eyes of the Lord? And we've got to be waiting for that next invitation.
And he is so patient. And I love how patient he is with Peter and how gentle he is with them. And the basis for understanding, like, I mean, it starts off, like, like you said, at the very roots, it's about change, right? But why do some people want to change? Why do some people not want to change? Are they afraid? Do they doubt? Do they think it's not for them? And I love that the journey, Peter's journey takes you through some of those questions to discover that about you.
And the thought that sometimes we get so satisfied with being ordinary, and the reminder that sometimes we have to avoid small thinking, and we have to set aside for wondering and for even being open to the idea that the Lord maybe has something in store for us that we haven't considered, and to be open to receiving those invitations to see what could happen next.
We are so excited about this book. Maybe we want to talk just for a second about why, what we had in mind as we were writing it.
Yeah.
To just kind of discover. We both have a friend, who, as we were writing this, we're talking about it, and we could both see great potential, in him. We could see that even though he was ordinary like anyone else, that if he would just let the Lord accept the Lord's invitations, that the Lord could help him discover great things. And so it was a neat experience to write it and think, a lot about this friend and about our own lives. And the book, you'll see, is designed, to have you pause,
and have those moments of reflections. One of my favorite memories of this book was reading through the book with that friend of ours, and we didn't read it all at once. We read it over several different nights with a journal in hand, and as we got to each invitation and each question, we stopped and thought about that place in our life and where we were, and maybe what we would do differently if the Lord would take us and lead us where we needed to go. And it took us a month, even though this book is short and a really easy read, it took us a month to go through and think about each of those invitations seriously and consider them in our lives. And it was a neat experience. It was an experience I won't ever forget. In fact, one that I wouldn't mind doing it for a family gathering with my own kids.
And I think one thing I really appreciate is I don't necessarily think the Lord demands, immediate change out of us. It's an individual journey, and following Peter's story really helps somebody question and discover themselves. Okay, do I trust the Lord enough to accept his invitations? Am I willing to do that? And he waits patiently, extending those invitations ever so gently, and just he wants us, I believe, to discover great things in ourselves.
Yeah, I love the quote on page 102. There is a spark of greatness in you just waiting to be ignited. Your possibilities span the universe. You have within you the potential to become someone remarkable. You were not sent to this earth to play small, to shrink, to fail. You were destined to make a difference. You were made for amazing things. And I really believe that is true about each one of us. It might be fun to talk about what's unique about this book as compared to other books. And one of our favorite parts of this book is, as we were writing it, we had someone else in mind that just came to mind who maybe this message about Peter would help, and we felt that wasn't just unique to us. We felt like that was maybe something that would happen for every single person who read the book. And so at the end of the book, we included an invitation that we're kind of excited about, and we just ask, was there anyone who came to mind when you read this book, someone you love, someone in need? And we gave an invitation to pass this book along to somebody who you think needs it. And some of our favorite responses from this book so far have been the emails that we have received from people who read this book, and interestingly, before they even got to the invitation at the back, had thought to themselves, I know somebody who needs this message.